"Hey, kitchen boy. Get that black guy away from my food right now." The words cut through the elegant atmosphere of Meridian Restaurant like a knife through butter. Jason Cole's voice carried across the dining room with the entitled arrogance of someone who had never faced real consequences for his racism. Every conversation stopped. Crystal glasses paused halfway to lips. Even the soft jazz music seemed to fade as 40 of the city's elite turned to stare at the man who had just shattered the evening's refined ambience with his blatant bigotry. At the center of the storm stood Kevin Brown, a 34-year-old chef whose steady hands never wavered as he continued plating the most exquisite dish Jason Cole would ever taste, and the last meal that would ever be served in Cole's restaurant empire. But Jason Cole had no idea what he had just unleashed. The stainless steel counters of Meridian Restaurant gleamed under the soft lighting as Kevin Brown moved through the kitchen with the fluid precision of a master craftsman. His movements carried the confident grace of someone who had spent 2 decades perfecting his art, every knife stroke deliberate, every seasoning measured not just by sight, but by an intuition forged through countless hours of relentless dedication. Steam rose from the sauté pans as Kevin adjusted the flame beneath a delicate wine reduction, his dark eyes focused with laser-like intensity on the subtle changes that would make the difference between excellence and perfection. The Friday evening rush was in full swing at Meridian, one of downtown's premier dining establishments, where corporate executives and old-money families expected nothing less than culinary artistry with their $300 tasting menus. Through the kitchen service window, Kevin observed the dining room with the analytical gaze of someone who understood that cooking was only half the equation. The other half was reading people, understanding their expectations, their prejudices, their dangerous assumptions about who belonged in a kitchen worthy of James Beard recognition. What the well-dressed diners sipping their vintage Bordeaux couldn't possibly know was that Kevin Brown wasn't just another line cook helping during the busy season. He was the son of Chef Marcus Brown, the legendary culinary innovator who had revolutionized farm-to-table cuisine in the 1990s, and Dr. Sandra Brown, one of the country's most feared FDA enforcement specialists. Kevin himself possessed credentials that would make most restaurateurs weep with envy: a culinary arts degree from the Culinary Institute of America, advanced training at Le Bernardin in New York, and most importantly, a Michelin star from his previous restaurant Essence, which he had reluctantly sold 18 months earlier to care for his ailing father. Tonight, Kevin was working as a favor to his longtime friend Marcus Chun, Meridian's executive chef, who found himself desperately short-staffed during the restaurant's busiest season. It was meant to be temporary assistance, a way for Kevin to stay connected to the industry while he planned his next culinary venture. "Order up, table 12, Kevin called out, sliding a perfectly composed seared scallop dish across the stainless steel pass. The presentation was a masterpiece of technique, the scallops caramelized to golden perfection, accompanied by a cauliflower puree that had been refined through multiple iterations and microgreens arranged with artistic precision that spoke of classical French training. The dining room hummed with the sophisticated energy of successful people celebrating another profitable week. Candlelight flickered against wine glasses, and conversations flowed in the hushed tones of those accustomed to discussing million-dollar deals over expertly prepared meals. It was into this atmosphere of refined elegance that Jason Cole made his entrance, and everything changed. At 42, Cole embodied every toxic aspect of inherited privilege: arrogant, dismissive, and absolutely convinced that his family's restaurant fortune entitled him not just to luxury, but to complete deference from everyone he encountered. As the primary owner of Cole Hospitality Empire, which operated 18 upscale establishments across 4 states, he viewed every other restaurant as either potential acquisition targets or inferior competitors unworthy of his attention. Tonight's visit to Meridian had a specific, predatory purpose. Cole had heard whispers in industry circles about the restaurant's meteoric rise in reputation and wanted to conduct his own evaluation before making a hostile takeover bid. His method was always the same: find weakness, exploit it mercilessly, then acquire the property at below market value while destroying careers in the process. "Mr. Cole, welcome," the maitre d' said with practiced deference, though something in his tone suggested previous unpleasant encounters. "Your usual table this evening?" Cole's pale blue eyes immediately locked onto the open kitchen, studying the choreographed movement of chefs and cooks working in perfect harmony. His predatory instincts were already activated, searching for any detail that could be weaponized in future hostile negotiations. "Actually, Thomas, I want to speak with whoever's running the circus back there," Cole announced, his voice deliberately pitched loud enough to reach neighboring tables. "I have some serious concerns about quality control and professional standards that need immediate addressing." The maitre d' shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the tone that historically preceded devastating confrontations. "Sir, our executive chef Marcus is currently managing. I don't care what his name is or what he thinks he's managing. Get him out here now. I want to understand exactly who's responsible for what happens to my food before it reaches this table. Within minutes, Marcus Chen appeared tableside, his chef's whites immaculate despite the evening's intense service pressure. At 29, he carried himself with a quiet professionalism that had earned him features in Bon Appetit magazine, though he had yet to achieve the level of critical acclaim that constantly eluded him. Good evening, Mr. Cole. I'm Marcus Chen, executive chef. How can I assist you tonight? Cole didn't stand, didn't extend his hand, didn't even acknowledge Marcus's presence with basic human courtesy. Instead, he continued studying the wine list with theatrical concentration while speaking. Marcus. Listen carefully. I've been hearing mixed things about this establishment. Inconsistent reports. Before I commit to your most expensive tasting menu, I need absolute assurance about who's actually touching my food back there. Sir, I can personally guarantee that our entire culinary team maintains the highest professional standards in the industry. That's not what I'm asking, Cole interrupted, his voice taking on the razor-sharp edge that had intimidated countless business rivals into submission. I observed someone back there who doesn't exactly fit the profile of executive chef material. Dark skin, working the main line. Please tell me he's just handling prep work or dish sanitation duties. The racist implication detonated through the air like a social bomb. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but years of dealing with difficult customers had taught him to maintain professional composure even when facing obvious bigotry. Mr. Cole, every member of our culinary team is extensively trained and... Extensively trained? Cole laughed, the sound completely devoid of warmth or humanity. Come on, Marcus. We both understand kitchen realities here. There's a fundamental difference between actual chefs and people who just happen to work in restaurants. I'm paying premium prices tonight, and I expect my food prepared by legitimate culinary professionals, not diversity quota hires. In the kitchen, Kevin heard every poisonous word through the service window. His knife paused mid-chop, and something shifted in his dark eyes, not anger, but the calculated stillness of a predator who had encountered this particular brand of ignorance before and learned to respond with devastating strategic patience. I'll personally oversee every aspect of your meal preparation, Marcus said, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. Excellent decision, Cole replied, settling back in his chair with satisfied smugness. And Marcus? Make absolutely certain that kitchen worker stays completely away from anything involving my food. I don't want to have to contact health services about potential hygiene violations and contamination concerns. The words carried clearly through the restaurant, causing nearby diners to pause their conversations and exchange looks ranging from embarrassment to outright disgust at Cole's blatant racism. Several patrons glanced toward the kitchen with expressions that suggested they were reconsidering their own meal choices. Kevin set down his knife and turned to Marcus, who had returned to the kitchen radiating barely contained rage from every line of his body. Don't even think about it, Marcus said quietly before Kevin could speak. He's Jason Cole. His family owns more restaurant real estate than anyone else in the state. We cannot afford to make an enemy of someone with that level of financial and political influence. Kevin's expression remained serene, almost meditative in its calmness. Marcus, what exactly did he order? The chef's premium tasting menu. 10 courses. He claims he wants to comprehensively evaluate our capabilities before considering us for some kind of business partnership that probably involves hostile acquisition. Let me prepare it. Marcus shook his head vigorously. Kevin, you heard exactly what he said. If he discovers that you personally handled his food. He won't discover anything until it's far too late to matter, Kevin replied, his voice carrying a quiet confidence that made Marcus pause mid-objection. Trust me on this particular battle. I know exactly what I'm doing. What Marcus didn't realize was that Kevin had recognized Jason Cole the moment he walked through the front door. Not just as a successful restaurant owner, but as the man whose aggressive acquisition tactics had systematically destroyed 7 family-owned establishments in the past 2 years, always targeting businesses with significant minority ownership or leadership positions. Kevin began preparing the first course with movements that transcended mere cooking and entered the realm of performance art. The amuse-bouche featured house-cured tuna, microgreens cultivated in the restaurant's rooftop garden, and a wasabi caviar that required the kind of technical precision that separated competent cooks from genuine masters of the craft. As he worked, each technique Kevin employed told a story of training that extended far beyond what any ordinary line cook would possess. The way he julienned the vegetables into perfect matchsticks, the precise temperature control for the sous vide preparation, the artistic plating that transformed simple ingredients into edible sculpture, every detail spoke of education and experience at the highest levels of culinary excellence. "Where did you learn to plate like that?" Marcus asked, watching Kevin create what resembled a small-scale masterpiece rather than a simple appetizer. Kevin smiled enigmatically while adjusting the final garnish with surgical precision. "Someone who taught me that every dish should tell a story about the chef's soul." The first course arrived at Cole's table with theatrical presentation worthy of a Michelin-starred establishment. He examined the plate with the critical eye of someone who considered himself a sophisticated judge of culinary artistry, photographing it from multiple angles, partly for his social media presence, partly as potential documentation if the food failed to meet his impossibly high standards. Cole took his first bite, and his expression underwent a subtle but unmistakable transformation. The explosion of flavors was immediate and complex, the tuna's richness perfectly balanced by citrus brightness, the microgreens providing textural contrast that elevated the entire composition to something approaching high art. He chewed slowly, his business instincts warring against his deeply held prejudices. This wasn't merely good food. This was extraordinary food. James Beard Award caliber food. The kind of culinary excellence that could establish a restaurant's reputation and attract the attention of national food critics and celebrity chefs. "Marcus," he called out, his tone sharp with suspicion rather than appreciation. "Who exactly prepared this course?" Marcus appeared again, wariness evident in every line of his posture. "Is there a problem with the preparation, sir?" "The problem is that this is too sophisticated for your establishment's supposed skill level," Cole said, his eyes narrowing with calculated suspicion. "I recognize advanced technique when I encounter it. This isn't standard line cook preparation. This is chef-level execution that requires years of professional training. So either you've been deliberately misleading me about your kitchen hierarchy, or you have someone back there who's significantly undervalued and underutilized." In the kitchen, Kevin was already plating the second course, a lobster bisque that demanded perfect timing and temperature control. The soup was enriched with cognac imported directly from France and garnished with lobster medallions that had been poached to achieve optimal tenderness. "Kevin," Marcus whispered urgently, "he's asking increasingly specific technical questions. Maybe we should reconsider this entire approach." "Let him ask whatever questions interest him," Kevin replied calmly, adjusting the final garnish with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker. Sometimes the most effective way to address racist assumptions is to allow them to collapse spectacularly under their own intellectual weight. The second course produced an even more dramatic effect than the first. Cole found himself involuntarily closing his eyes as he tasted the bisque, the depth and complexity of flavors indicating hours of proper preparation and an understanding of classical French methodology that very few American chefs truly possessed. This was rapidly becoming a significant problem for Cole's original predatory intentions. He had come to Meridian expecting to discover operational weaknesses he could exploit in hostile takeover negotiations. Instead, he was encountering culinary excellence that could potentially threaten his own restaurant's market positions and critical reputations. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he kept on speed dial for exactly these situations. "Victor, it's Jason. I need you to get down to Meridian Restaurant immediately with full inspection equipment. No, this isn't a social visit. Bring your documentation camera and violation report forms. I suspect we might have a serious food safety situation that requires immediate professional intervention." Victor Hayes was Cole's privately employed food safety consultant, essentially a former health inspector whose license had been suspended for ethical violations, but who now worked exclusively to identify code infractions that could be used to damage competing restaurants. His methods operated in legal gray areas, but his results were consistently effective for Cole's business destruction objectives. "Give me 25 minutes, Victor's voice crackled through the phone connection. "What specifically am I documenting tonight?" "Everything and anything. Temperature violations, improper storage protocols, cleanliness infractions, staff certification irregularities. I don't care what you discover or fabricate, just find something substantial enough to create serious problems for their operating license and public reputation." Cole ended the call and signaled his server with imperious gestures that demanded immediate attention. "I want to speak personally with whoever prepared these exceptional courses. Have them come out here right now. Marcus approached Kevin with obvious reluctance written across his features. He wants to meet the chef responsible for his meal. Kevin, I really think we should consider alternative strategies. It's time, Kevin said simply, untying his apron and smoothing down his chef's coat with deliberate methodical care. For the first time that evening, he reached into his jacket pocket and retrieved a small item that he pinned to his collar, a golden insignia that Marcus had never seen before. Kevin, what exactly is that pin? Something I earned several years ago in a previous life, Kevin replied, walking toward the dining room with the quiet confidence of someone who was about to reveal cards he'd been holding throughout the entire evening. The dining room fell subtly quieter as Kevin approached Cole's table, conversations pausing as other diners sensed the electric tension building between the two men who represented completely different worlds. Cole looked up as Kevin drew near, and his expression immediately shifted to one of predictable disdain mixed with territorial aggression. Ah, perfect. You're the kitchen worker I was discussing with management earlier. Actually, Kevin said, his voice carrying the cultured, educated accent of someone with extensive formal culinary training, I'm Kevin Brown, and I had the distinct privilege of preparing your meal this evening. Cole's eyes flicked dismissively to the Michelin star pin on Kevin's collar, then back to his face with undisguised skepticism and barely contained hostility. That's genuinely amusing. You can purchase those novelty pins online for less than $15. Kevin smiled, not the subservient, apologetic expression Cole expected, but the patient, confident smile of someone who was about to deliver a comprehensive education in the catastrophic dangers of assumptions based on racial prejudice. Mr. Cole, I understand you have serious, legitimate concerns about food quality and kitchen hygiene standards. I'm genuinely curious, when was the last time your restaurant properties passed comprehensive, unannounced federal food safety inspections without any violations or citations? The question hung in the air like a direct challenge to intellectual combat. Cole's face flushed slightly, but he maintained his aggressive posture, unwilling to back down in front of an audience of potential customers and influential business associates. My restaurants consistently exceed all federal health standards and local regulatory requirements by significant margins, which is considerably more than I can confidently say about establishments that hire unqualified personnel based on diversity quotas rather than actual culinary competence. Mr. Cole, Kevin interrupted with gentle firmness, his tone remaining professionally courteous despite the escalating hostility, before you complete that sentence, you should be aware that I've been recording this entire conversation for legal documentation purposes. He indicated a small device that had been discreetly attached to his chef's coat throughout the evening. More importantly, you should understand exactly who my mother is and what she does professionally. Cole's eyes narrowed with sudden wariness as he sensed the conversation shifting into dangerous territory. Your mother. Dr. Sandra Brown, Senior FDA Enforcement Specialist for the Regional Compliance Division. She's been conducting a comprehensive, multi-jurisdictional investigation into Cole Hospitality Empire's adherence to federal food safety regulations for the past 11 months. The effect was immediate and devastatingly visible. Cole's confident posture deflated like a punctured balloon as the implications registered in his business-oriented mind. The federal investigation was supposed to be completely confidential and classified. How could this supposed line cook possibly have access to that sensitive, protected information? At that precise moment, the restaurant's front entrance opened and Victor Hayes entered, carrying his inspection equipment in official-looking cases designed to intimidate restaurant staff and management. Cole felt a brief surge of relief. His hired consultant would discover violations that would shift public attention away from his own rapidly mounting legal problems. Mr. Cole, Victor announced loudly enough for nearby tables to hear clearly, I'm here to conduct the comprehensive food safety inspection you specifically requested this evening. Kevin turned slowly to face Victor, and his expression shifted to one of professional recognition tinged with something approaching genuine amusement. Victor Hayes. Former health inspector, professional certification permanently revoked in 2019 for falsifying violation reports, accepting bribes from restaurant owners, and conducting fraudulent inspections. Currently operating without proper licensing, legal authority, or government sanction to conduct any official restaurant inspections. Victor stopped mid-stride as if he had walked into an invisible wall, his confidence evaporating like steam from a hot pan. How do you possibly know about? Because unlike Mr. Cole, I make it my personal and professional business to thoroughly verify all facts before making accusations that could destroy people's livelihoods and careers, Kevin replied with smooth, devastating precision. He reached into his pocket and produced a business card, extending it toward Victor with professional courtesy that masked its lethal implications. Dr. Sandra Brown, FDA Regional Enforcement Division. Perhaps you'd like to personally explain to my mother why you're attempting to conduct unauthorized illegal inspections with permanently revoked credentials. Cole stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor with a sound that carried throughout the suddenly silent dining room like a gunshot. This is absolutely ridiculous and completely unacceptable. You're just a cook trying to intimidate legitimate business owners with fabricated connections and false governmental authority. Am I? Kevin's voice remained perfectly calm and controlled, but something in his tone made Cole pause mid-sentence as if he had suddenly realized he was walking into quicksand. Marcus, would you please bring me tonight's complete temperature monitoring logs, sanitation checklists, and staff certification documentation? All of them. Marcus disappeared into the kitchen and returned carrying multiple clipboards filled with meticulously maintained documentation that represented hours of careful record-keeping. Kevin flipped through the pages with casual expertise, his trained eye immediately identifying exactly what he was searching for. Absolutely fascinating, Kevin murmured thoughtfully, his voice carrying clearly through the restaurant's tense silence. Mr. Cole, you expressed serious, legitimate concerns about our food safety protocols and operational standards. According to these comprehensive, independently verified logs, our cold storage systems have maintained perfect temperatures throughout the entire evening without any deviation. Our cooking temperatures exceed all federal safety requirements by significant margins. Our sanitation procedures are fully documented, time-stamped, and independently verified by third-party monitoring systems. He looked up at Cole with the same patient, confident smile that now carried an edge of steel. Can you make identical claims about Cole Hospitality Empire's flagship location downtown? Because according to the preliminary FDA assessment report my mother shared with me during our phone conversation last week, there were some rather disturbing and potentially criminal discoveries during the initial investigation phase. Cole's business instincts finally overcame his racist arrogance as he recognized the sophisticated multi-layered trap he had walked directly into through his own prejudiced assumptions. You're bluffing. Federal investigators don't share confidential case details with family members, especially not with kitchen workers. Kevin pulled out his smartphone and dialed a number from his recent contacts. Mom? It's Kevin. I'm currently at Meridian Restaurant, and I have Jason Cole here with me. He's publicly questioning the validity and legitimacy of your FDA investigation into his restaurant empire. Yes, he's standing right here beside me, and he's been making some interesting statements about food safety standards. Kevin extended the phone toward Cole with the same professional courtesy he had shown throughout the encounter. She'd like to speak with you directly about your concerns. Cole accepted the phone with visibly trembling fingers, his earlier arrogance completely replaced by obvious panic. The conversation was brief but clearly audible in the restaurant's complete silence, every word carrying to the surrounding tables where other diners sat transfixed by the unfolding professional destruction. Mr. Cole, this is Dr. Sandra Brown, Senior FDA Food Safety Enforcement Specialist. Your restaurant properties are currently under active federal investigation for multiple serious health code violations, including systematic temperature control failures, undocumented food sourcing irregularities, potential cross-contamination issues, and suspected fraudulent safety reporting. No, sir, this is not harassment, intimidation, or retaliation. This is standard due process under federal regulatory authority. Yes, you should definitely contact your legal representation immediately and prepare for additional inspections this week. Cole handed the phone back to Kevin with hands that shook noticeably, his earlier racist confidence completely evaporated and replaced by visible terror. I had absolutely no idea about any federal investigation. No, you didn't know, Kevin agreed with gentle but implacable firmness. You assumed. You assumed I was merely a kitchen worker because of the color of my skin and your own prejudiced expectations. You assumed your family's wealth and business connections made you immune to consequences and federal oversight. You assumed you could publicly humiliate service industry workers without facing any meaningful legal or professional repercussions. Kevin reached into his jacket and produced a leather portfolio, placing it carefully on Cole's table with the precision of someone laying down a winning poker hand. My professional credentials, Mr. Cole. Culinary Institute of America, summa cum laude graduate. Advanced certification from Lou Bernardine under Chef Eric Reipert. Michelin star recipient for Essence Restaurant, which I sold voluntarily last year to care for my ailing father. Current consulting position with the James Beard Foundation on diversity initiatives and excellence standards in fine dining establishments. He opened the portfolio to reveal certificates, awards, recommendation letters, and photographs with some of the culinary world's most respected figures. Every single course you consumed tonight? I personally prepared it using techniques I learned during 2 decades of professional development at the highest levels of culinary artistry. Every flavor combination that impressed you? I created it based on classical training, innovative experimentation, and artistic vision. Every presentation that exceeded your expectations? I executed it with skills that very few chefs in this entire city actually possess. The restaurant had fallen into complete, absolute silence, every patron and staff member riveted by the systematic professional destruction unfolding before them. Kevin's voice carried clearly through the space, delivering his final statements with the quiet authority of someone who had earned every accolade through merit, dedication, and excellence rather than inheritance or privilege. Mr. Cole, you entered this establishment tonight with the specific intention of destroying this restaurant through false accusations, intimidation tactics, and racial harassment. Instead, you've exposed your own illegal business practices, revealed the profound depth of your ignorance about genuine culinary excellence, and demonstrated that your success is built on prejudice rather than competence. At that moment, 3 additional figures entered the restaurant: a woman wearing a business suit and displaying an FDA identification badge, a man in a suit carrying legal documentation, and a woman with professional video equipment marked with a local news station's logo. Dr. Sandra Brown, FDA Regional Enforcement Division, the first woman announced with official authority that commanded immediate attention. Mr. Cole, we need to discuss the immediate closure of 6 of your restaurant locations due to serious health violations discovered during our comprehensive investigation, as well as additional charges related to tonight's incident. The news camera began recording as Cole, who had entered Meridian as a predator seeking weakness to exploit, found himself trapped as prey facing federal charges, restaurant closures, civil rights violations, and the complete destruction of his public reputation. Additionally, Dr. Brown continued with clinical precision, we have received a complete audio recording of tonight's incident, including racially discriminatory statements, attempted intimidation of food service workers, and conspiracy to file false health violation reports. This evidence will be forwarded to the appropriate civil rights enforcement authorities, the State Attorney General's office, and federal prosecutors for investigation of potential hate crime charges.